Okay, so this is the middle-aged makeup tutorial. This can also be open to interpretation for mid-30s to 50s, 60s, however old you really want to take it. It's all open to interpretation. Some things you're going to need. You're going to need some cream-based makeup in this palette that I'm using. This is just a basic palette. The top shades are 4 shades that you can mix together to fit the right base for your actor for their specific skin tone. I'm using the Fair Olive Fair palette, so this is for my skin tone specifically. And then on the bottom of this palette there is basic brown character shadow. You can use this for texture, fine lines, stippling. You can use it for shadows. This is like the color that you're going to want. Then these two can be lip and cheek colors, but it's all open to the kind of skin tone and what texture and what you're specifically going for. Other things that you're possibly going to need, a yellow cream base. I got this from NYX for like $4 at CVS. It can be used for hair when you're doing white hair, and I'll get into that later. You're also going to want a translucent powder. Ideally, I like the translucent powder that fits your skin tone better, but this is the one that came with the kit and it's white, so we're just going to use that one. For other hair application, you could also use silver. When I got this from Party City for like $2. 2 makeup sponges. I use one for shadow and one for highlight, and I'll get into that. I want a stipple sponge, and these are relatively cheap. You're also going to want a powder puff. These are, you can find them anywhere. You could probably even use a cotton ball. For tools specifically, you're going to want a powder brush, a rat tail comb, and this is a rat tail comb. It has the little rat tail. You're also going to want an eyebrow pencil if you need to fill in the brows. That could also be used as eyeliner. Ones that are like bendable but not too bendable. You don't want ones that are very loose. I usually go with a very thin one that you can use typically for eyeliners, or when you're painting you can use them for very small lines. And then I have 2 that are kind of tapered at the end. They're very good at going with the flow of your fingers and how you want to mold them. And then I just have, this is a typical blending brush for eyeshadow. I use that for shadow. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is definitely make sure that you're wearing clothes that you can work in, and you're also going to want to make sure that your hair is up because you do not want to get your hair caught in any makeup. So after you have your hair up and you're in good working clothes, you're going to want to moisturize depending on how dry the skin is. Okay, after you're moisturized, before you start actually applying any makeup, you're going to want to look at the face in the mirror and look exactly where all the lines are. So to do this, you're going to want to make a bunch of faces in the mirror. Like if you frown, you can see the lines there. You can like drag your fingers down and you can see where the eyes start to sag. If you shift your face in the light, you can see the specific shadows. You can see how far back your eyes are packed, like with those specific shadows. If you wrinkle your forehead up, you can see a bunch of forehead lines that you can use. And if you smile, you can see the smile lines that you can apply. It's all based on where you want your lines to be and how old you want your person to be. So with my face specifically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the cheekbones a little bit just to show a little bit of hollowing out. I'm also going to do some under eye bags. I'm going to bring in a couple forehead wrinkles. I'm going to bring in the forehead. I'm going to highlight my nasolabial folds. I'm possibly going to do a line to my cupid's bow, and I'm also going to do some jowls right here. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to first put your base on. You're going to want to make sure when you're doing this that you don't mix the colors drastically. When you're applying your base, you also want to make sure that there's even coverage all over your face. You want to make sure it's all nicely blended. You want to make sure that all of your acne is covered up because middle-aged people do not have acne. And you also want to make sure that your makeup only goes to the jawline, because if you're wearing shirts that involve white collars, the makeup will rub off on it. So you want to blend into your jawline, but you don't want to go any further. Now I'm going to go into shadows. So when I start actually doing the old age makeup, I definitely start shadows first. So I always go shadows, then highlight, then lines, just so it'll all blend together and it'll look nice and even. So what I do first is I take the narrow end of my sponge and I dip it into my shadow, like so. And what I do first is, I usually like to start with my nasolabial folds. You're going to want to go along the general area of where your nasolabial folds start and end. You're going to want to start by with your nasolabial folds, do a little bit of your jowls, like so. You're basically going to want to do some basic mapping of where your shadows are going to go. Then what you're going to want to do, your eye bags, this is like the general area of where they are. When it comes to eye bags, they usually don't go down and up like a C because those don't look as accurate. They go down and then they kind of branch out from each other, kind of like tree branches, if that makes sense. So you do them like that, and then apply some shadow right around each side of your nose bridge, right around there, just to add some depth and dimension. Then you're also going to want to put in a little right under your cheekbones to add some shadows there. And then your forehead right on either side, like so. So you're going to notice when you're blending more that it's going to look kind of scarce and it's going to look like you're a dirty hobo, but don't worry, that's normal. You're going to go over that later on with highlighter. So one of the basic things you need to remember for blending, especially with shadows, is when you make a line like so, you're going to want to blend up like so. You never want to blend down, because when you look at age wrinkles, their shadows always are up and there's a highlight right underneath. So you're always going to make sure that you blend up. And if you choose to do your jowls, you're going to want to make sure that they look kind of rounded, but you don't want to make it look like an obvious round. You want it to make it look like an actual authentic old age round. So you're going to want to kind of branch it like so. Yeah, just keep blending up. Okay, so once you have all of your shadows blended in with your jawline, jowls, nasolabial folds, eye bags, eyeshadows, and forehead as your base, next you're going to want to do your highlight. So with the highlight for me, because I'm so fucking pale, what you can do is, what I did was I just took the palest shade of the bases, and when it comes to highlighting, what I first do is I go right under the lines, so like so, and then you blend that out so you can see there's a sharp contrast between the highlight and the shadow that you just made. And you're going to want to make sure that it's nicely blended so there isn't any harsh lines. So you're going to want to blend right underneath, and then in order to give it a more rounder, more accurate age look, you're going to want to kind of go right above the shadow, but you're going to want to make it look like kind of like the rounded jowl below. Just very lightly layer it, and you can keep going back and forth with shadowing and layering and blending, and you just keep going until you reach the consistency that you want. You can see what I'm doing is I'm blending right underneath where the shadow lines are that I made. I go a little bit in between that I'm going to blend in, and then I do a little bit right underneath just to show the emphasis on where the bags are. And you're going to want to blend it together so it looks nice and even. Okay, so once you have your basic shadows and highlights all blended out and you got it to the right consistency that you want, now we have the detail lines. So for the detail lines, we're going to use a very small, fine precision brush, and then we're going to be using the character shadow, the same shadow that we've been using. So when you do these distinct lines, you're going to make sure that they're very thin, because the thicker that they are, the less believable that they are, and you want to make sure that the ends taper in and out, so you know it starts small, big, and then it gradually tapers out. Because if it just ends, you can tell that it's a fake line. So what you're going to do is right on the border of the highlight and the shadow that you made, you're going to do a very thin line right there. So those are two lines, and of course you're going to blend this into the shadow, but this is just the base. And then you're going to do more distinct lines, like small ones for the jowls that you get to blend out if your jowls need a little bit more detail. And then when you do your age lines, which I think are personally the toughest lines to do, and then you're going to very, very lightly go right under where you wanted your shadow. And then when it comes to in between your eyebrows, you're going to want to that just are rather small, just like that. But you can see with this line how the ends are supposed to be tapered out. And then for your forehead wrinkles, if you want to do your forehead, you can see all the wrinkles that you can possibly make. There's no wrong way to do forehead wrinkles, and there's no right way to do it. It's literally just a bunch of squiggly lines. I'll just do them just for the sake of this video. They can be just a bunch of random lines. If you don't want to do the lines, that's also fine as well. It can also be some slight lines where your eyebrows are, and of course we're going to blend these out. And then if you want to do smile lines, some smile lines go like so, but smile lines are also very hard to do because everyone's smile lines are different. So now that we have all these lines, we're going to blend them into the shadows. As you can see as how I'm blending the lines, I'm constantly layering highlight and then shadow and then highlight and then shadow just to get the right blending consistency. And you can see with the nasal labial folds right here how I'm trying to evenly blend the distinctive line that I made to add the detail, but I'm also making sure that the ends are tapered so they don't look like they just abruptly stopped, because on a normal face that's not what happens. After you're done with that, and that will take a while if you want to reach the right consistency depending on what you want. Next we're going to add some texture. So when I think of middle age, I think of more orangish toned skin, so I'm going to take a more peach orangey tone, and I'm going to take my sponge and then I'm going to dip it in like so. So you want to have a nice coat on it. You're going to want to put a couple test tries on your skin to make sure that it's what you want. And when you're stippling your face, you want to make sure that you're not just doing stamps across your face, because the patterns will look the same. So you're going to want to stipple but rotate. Make sure that it's more like this, where it's a little noticeable. You don't want it to be extremely noticeable, because then it'll look like you drew pores on your face. So you're just gonna want to keep stippling, pressing it down on your hand, and do not drag the sponge. Just dot and lift and rotate and dot and lift and rotate. After you have the texture that you want, we're going to quick move to the hair before we finish setting your powder. If you have more dark toned hair, like very dark brunette or black, what you want to do is take your yellow cream from when I mentioned it earlier, and you're going to want to dip your rat tail brush into it so you have some product on the bottom. And then what you're going to do is manually just comb it in like so. It's like you're painting the individual hairs. And you're going to apply your white right on top with the same idea of on the tip of the rat tip. You just comb it through your hair to make it look more even, and that will make sure that it doesn't fade into your hair. So that is for the white hair. If you choose to do gray hair, what I do is I take my silver, the same idea, rat tail comb, tip of the rat tail comb, and you'll want to comb it through your hair. Okay, so finally all you have to do is set it. So I'm using my white setting powder that came with the kit and my makeup puff, and you're just going to want to get a lot of product onto the puff, and then you're just going to want to press it onto your face very lightly, and that seals it in. That really like cakes the makeup onto your face to make sure that it's not going to go anywhere from sweat or from lighting. And then your final step with this tutorial is you take your powder brush and you lightly brush away all the excess product that you just dabbed onto your skin. Do not drag it. Make sure it's very lightly patted in order to get the excess off. And that's it. So this is the finished product.